What if death isn't the end, but a passage we've misunderstood all along? Stop whatever you're doing and pay close attention, because what you're about to hear might change how you see life and death forever. What if I told you that everything you think you know about what happens after we die is wrong? Now imagine this: an ancient manuscript kept hidden for centuries, claiming to chart step by steply what happens the moment you take your final breath. This isn't fiction. This is the Tibetan Book of the Dead, a sacred spiritual manual crafted over 1,000 years ago, believed to guide the soul beyond the physical realm. But there's a catch. Miss a single step in this journey, and you risk getting trapped in a cycle of rebirth, or worse, eternal confusion. This book doesn't just describe the afterlife, it walks you through it. And watching this video might just reshape how you live, how you die, and everything you believe in between. But be warned, once you see what's on the other side, you can't unsee it. Now consider this: despite all of humanity's scientific breakthroughs, despite decoding DNA and reaching the edge of our solar system, one question still escapes us: what really happens after we die? In truth, we are no closer to answering that than the monks of ancient Tibet were. And maybe that's why this book still captivates minds around the world. It dares to say what others only whisper, that consciousness doesn't end at death, but continues through mysterious realms we cannot yet grasp. For centuries, this sacred text has fascinated not only spiritual seekers and mystics, but also modern scientists. Why? Because it proposes something radical. It says that after physical death, consciousness moves through stages, some peaceful, some terrifying, all full of potential for liberation or rebirth. And here's where things get eerily fascinating. These ancient descriptions align with the reports of modern-day near-death stories of seeing blinding light, meeting mysterious beings, feeling unexplainable peaceful, echo what the Bardo Thodol spoke of long ago. Is it truly a coincidence? Or are we tapping into something deeper about the fabric of existence itself? Now, imagine the implications. What if these teachings could do more than explain death? What if they could help us understand our own minds, our own consciousness, the very core of who we are right now, in this life? The bridge between ancient spiritual insight and today's cutting-edge consciousness studies is more than symbolic. It's a map. But here's the real twist. The power of the Tibetan Book of the Dead isn't just in its revelations about death. Its true purpose is to awaken us to life. By forcing us to confront mortality head-on, it reveals something profound. Everything is temporary. Everything passes. And that truth, instead of being terrifying, can be liberating. It pushes us to live with purpose, with clarity, with compassion. Not someday, right now. It's not just a guide for the dying. It's a wake-up call for the living. And maybe, just maybe, that's what you've been needing. So if this has stirred something deep within you, stay with me. Because in the next part, we'll dive into the hidden stages of the after-death journey, as described in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and uncover what it all means for how we should live right now. Are you ready to keep going? Transitions aren't just found in death, they happen in life. In every moment of change, of letting go, of becoming. To truly grasp the wisdom held in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, we must begin by understanding where it comes from. Mand, the visionary master who brought this sacred guide into the world. So take a breath, open your mind, and get ready to meet the extraordinary spirit behind this ancient knowledge. What if I told you that this book was never just meant for the dying? What if instead, it was written for anyone navigating life's most profound transitions? Because at its core, The Tibetan Book of the Dead, or Bardo Thodalis, not just about death. It's about transformation. It's a roadmap for every soul facing uncertainty, change, and the dissolution of the familiar. At the heart of this teaching lies the powerful concept of the bardo. In Tibetan Buddhism, a bardo isn't limited to the mysterious space between death and rebirth. It represents any in-between state, any transitional phase where the world we once knew begins to fade, and something new, something unknown starts to emerge. These moments are thresholds, and we all walk through them more often than we realize. Think about it. How many times in your life have you felt caught between what once was and what has not yet come? Those moments of uncertainty when you're standing in the void between jobs, between relationships, between identities. And they hold immense potential for transformation. Now here's where the Tibetan Book of the Dead becomes even more fascinating. It doesn't only speak of one passage. It unveils three distinct bardos, each one a critical stage of consciousness, each offering its own challenges, illusions, and opportunities for growth and liberation. Are you ready to step into these hidden realms? The first is the Chikai Bardo, the moment of physical death. But don't think of it as the end. Imagine, instead, a brilliant flash of pure awareness, a burst of clarity so intense, it strips away all illusions and reveals the deepest truths of your existence. That's the beginning. Then comes the Chanyad Bardo, the bardo of visions. Picture yourself surrounded by powerful, surreal images, both terrifying and beautiful, dancing around you in waves of color and sound. But here's the twist. These visions are not outside of you. They're projections of your own mind, shaped by your karma, your fears, your desires. More on that in a moment. Finally, we reach the Sidpa Bardo, the phase of becoming, the threshold of rebirth. Imagine standing at the edge of a new life, where your every thought and emotion begins shaping the next world you'll inhabit. This is the most delicate moment, where the direction of your soul's journey can change forever. But perhaps the most revolutionary truth in the Tibetan Book of the Dead is this: you don't have to die to experience these bardos. Every day of your life contains fragments of them, that dreamy fog between sleep and waking, a mini-death, that creative flow state where time vanishes, a glimpse into the bardo of visions, that moment of decision when your life could change forever. That's your personal bardo of rebirth. These transitions, big and smaller, sacred invitations to awaken. And now, as we stand at the edge of this ancient wisdom, we're ready to go deeper. Because the question remains, what exactly happens in that first crucial moment when the body lets go and the soul begins its journey? Brace yourself. We're about to step into the Chikai Bardo, the moment of death itself, where liberation is not just possible, but calling. Are you ready to face what comes next? In every ending, there is a door, and now you're standing right at the edge of it. Everything you've ever known, every sound, thought, and memory begins to fade. And in front of you, something breathtaking appears, a light so brilliant, so all-encompassing that it feels like it holds the very architecture of the universe. Behind you, your life dissolves like mist, fading into a blur of sensations and memories. This is not just the end. According to Tibetan wisdom, this is the moment of death, the crossing point where science and spirituality seem to whisper the same truth. Are you ready to uncover what truly lies beyond that dazzling threshold? Tibetan Buddhism tells us that death isn't merely a biological event. It is a gateway, a divine passageway filled with potential. In that final breath, as your heartbeat slows to silence and your physical senses shut down, your consciousness free. From the body awakens into a more vivid awareness than ever before. This is not darkness. It's the beginning of something vast, something sacred. In this extraordinary instant, you encounter what the ancients call the clear light irradiant. Brilliance that is not just beautiful, but ultimate. It's described as the purest essence of mind itself, the naked truth of consciousness, unfiltered by thought, ego, or identity. Tibetan wisdom teaches us this is not a fantasy or a hallucination. It's reality in its most authentic form. And here's the most extraordinary part: if you can recognize this light as your own true nature, your deepest awareness, then in that single moment, you could attain complete liberation. Imagine freedom from suffering, from the endless cycle of life, death, and rebirth. But this window is small. The experience of the clear light lasts for only a fleeting instant. And for most people, this sacred moment passes unnoticed. A dream evaporating at dawn. Why? Because the untrained mind, caught off guard by such intensity, recoils. Many fail to recognize the light as themselves. Instead, they interpret it as something foreign, something threatening. Fear arises, and with that fear comes retreat. Consciousness withdraws, descending further into the layers of the bardos, moving away from liberation and toward the path of rebirth. This reveals a profound hidden truth, that even in your final moment, you are offered the greatest opportunity. Of all the chance to awaken, to break the cycle, to return to your essence, but you must be ready. And readiness doesn't come by accident. It must be cultivated. Spiritual masters train for a lifetime to meet that light with clarity, to hold steady when most would flee. But what if this preparation wasn't only for monks? What if you, too, could train your mind for that moment, not through fear, but through understanding? And here's the incredible secret that the Tibetan Book of the Dead offers. The light of awareness, that radiant truth, isn't only available at the hour of death. Through deep meditation and conscious practice, you can begin to encounter glimpses of it right now in this life. These moments, brief, transcendent flashes of stillness and clarity, are not accidents. They're rehearsals, and now, as we step deeper, a question remains. What happens if you miss the clear light? What lies waiting in the next realm, the bardo of visions? Let's continue. After the fleeting brilliance of the clear light, the journey continues, and now it turns inward, into the mind's own vast terrain. So how can anyone truly prepare for such a powerful and pivotal moment? Tibetan masters teach that the key lies in training the mind long before death arrives. Through deep mindfulness, regular meditation, and devoted spiritual practice, practitioners gradually cultivate the ability to recognize the clear light when it finally reveals itself. This isn't a last-minute rescue plan. It's a lifelong discipline, an inner journey of awakening where each moment of awareness is like placing a stepping stone on the path to final liberation. That's why Tibetan Buddhists dedicate years, sometimes entire lifetimes, honing their attention, stilling the mind, and learning to remain present through all emotional storms. The more the mind is trained, the greater the chance that in that ultimate moment, instead of being overwhelmed, you'll recognize the light as your own essence and rest peacefully in it. But what happens if that moment is missed? For those not yet prepared to hold steady in the brilliance of the clear light, the path doesn't end there. Instead, the journey continues. consciousness enters an even more mysterious terrain what Tibetan tradition calls the second bardo, the bardo of visions. Here, the mind's projections erupt into life, filling the space around you with surreal, symbolic, often startling experiences. Picture this: you step beyond the clear light and enter what feels like a divine theater. Around you, magnificent beings of radiance and terrifying deities of immense power appear, shifting and swirling in dazzling displays. But here's the shocking truth: none of them are separate from you. These visions are not gods or monsters from another realm. They are you. Every hidden fear, every suppressed desire, every wound you never healed now takes form, asking to be seen. This is not chaos for its own sake. It is a mirror, a sacred unveiling. And the question that echoes through this stage is simple but profound. Will you recognize these visions as your own, or will you run from them in fear? In the early moments of the vision bardo, peaceful spirits appear first. Imagine yourself surrounded by luminous figures, radiant with compassion and wisdom emanating. A serenity so deep it shakes the core of your being. You might see the Buddha of infinite light, a symbol of pure awareness, or encounter mirror-like clarity reflecting your mind's highest potential. These beings are embodiments of your enlightened nature, the best parts of you laid bare. But even beauty can be overwhelming, and for many, this radiant encounter proves too intense to fully accept. Unprepared minds may shrink away from their own brilliance, doubting it could ever belong to them. And as this retreat begins, so does a shift. The light dims, the gentle faces contort. What was once calming now turns fierce. Wrathful spirits emerge as punishers, but as harsher reflections of the self. These are the parts you've buried, deep the rage, the jealousy, the grief, the regret, and now they demand attention. So how do you respond? That's what we'll explore in the next part of this journey: how to face the wrathful deities, and why even terror can become a path to awakening if you know how to see through it. Are you ready to step into the heart of your own shadows? Let's continue. Even the most radiant visions can give way to terrifying encounters. The mind isn't prepared to recognize itself in every form. The gentle, peaceful spirits fade, and now you are surrounded by fierce, blazing figures with eyes like fire and faces twisted in fury. But these beings are not your enemies. They are not here to punish or destroy. They are manifestations of everything unresolved within your age: fear, envy, shame, desire, and attachment brought to life in their rawest, most primal form. The supreme wrathful deity, with multiple arms and blazing eyes, doesn't appear to torment you. He appears to force you to confront the parts of yourself you've tried to bury. The question is, can you face these forces without fear? Can you see past the terror to recognize what these visions truly are? Because the truth is, the second bardo, the bardo of visions, is not a punishment. It's not a divine judgment. It is a mirror, a sacred space where your own consciousness amplifies what lies within. Every peaceful spirit, every terrifying deity is simply a reflection of your mind, of everything you've experienced, feared, suppressed, or desired. And here, it all rise, is undeniable and unavoidable. According to the Tibetan Book of the Dead, these figures are shadows cast by the light of your own awareness. They reveal the shape of your inner world, your attachments, regrets, fears, and longings made visible in a way that cannot be ignored. This confrontation with yourself may be brutal, but it holds immense potential. If you can remain aware, If you can recognize these visions as your own projections, then you are given a rare chance to burn through lifetimes of karmic weight and move closer to freedom. Why does this matter now, while you're alive? Because these same energies, anger, fear, compassion, love, are shaping your life today. The forces you will meet in the bardo are not new. They are already living inside you. Every moment of reactivity, every deep longing, every unresolved pain is part of the same story. The bardo of visions is not only about death, it's about life. It invites you to begin this process now, while you still have the power to transform. What if you began to see every fear, every emotional challenge, every painful trigger in your life as a symbolic deity here to teach you, to reflect something essential to help you transcend? Even Carl Jung saw these archetypal beings as more than myth. He believed the gods and demons described in the Tibetan Book of the Dead were reflections of the collective, unconscious universal aspects of the human psyche. As Jung put it, gods and demons are projections of the unconscious, powerful and inescapable until understood as parts of ourselves. And that is the hidden truth. These visions are not just reserved for death. They are part of your consciousness. Right now, they are waiting to be seen, acknowledged, and integrated. The second bardo is not merely about confronting terror. It's about embracing the fullness of your mind, light and dark alike. It asks, can you look directly at the most painful, shameful, or volatile parts of yourself and meet them not with fear or repression, but with compassion? Because that is where liberation begins. But this process is not without danger. For those who fail to recognize these visions as internal, the experience can quickly spiral into fear. The mind, unable to recognize its own projections, becomes lost in them, mistaking illusion for reality. And what happens then? We'll uncover that in the next stage of the journey, as we follow consciousness deeper into the final threshold of the bardos, where rebirth awaits. After facing the terrifying projections of your own mind in the second bardo, we now arrive at a moment where the consequences grow even more profound. If you fail to recognize these visions as your own creations, mistaking inner shadows for external threats, it's like being trapped inside a nightmare of your own making. The fear intensifies and the danger becomes real. Because if you cannot face these parts of yourself, if you retreat in fear rather than seeing the truth, the journey doesn't stop, it spirals further downward. You risk falling deeper into confusion, illusion, and eventually another cycle of rebirth, all shaped by the attachments and aversions you couldn't overcome. The second bardo is more than a frightening passage. It's a divine mirror, offering a raw, unfiltered look into your very soul. It lays bare what lives within you and gives you one final, powerful chance to awaken, to integrate, and to transform. But if you turn away from that mirror view, fear what you see, then the descent continues. So, ask yourself, are you truly prepared to witness your soul in its full, unmasked form? Can you face the reflection and embrace even what once terrified you? Because the next step leads us even deeper into a space where the choices you make now determine the very course of your existence. Now, picture this. You're no longer surrounded by visions of gods and demons. You're floating in a vast, formless sea where the life you once knew has completely dissolved. Yet even in this emptiness, something pulls at you, as something irresistible, like gravity, guiding you toward a new world. You've entered the third and final stage, the bardo of rebirth. Here, your every thought, emotion, and karmic imprint rises to the surface. With your consciousness stripped bare, You become a magnet attracting the precise ingredients that will shape your next incarnation. It's not a passive experience. This is a storm of creation, an energetic whirlwind where every past action and every lingering desire actively molds your next life. You are no longer simply a traveler. You are both the artist and the canvas, the storyteller and the story. The reality of your rebirth is forming moment by moment, crafted by the essence of who you are. In this realm, karma is not an abstract concept. It is tangible, alive. Every choice, every habit, every intention from your life gathers into powerful visions, faces, places, even entire worlds swirl around you. Each one represents a possible path, a potential reality your soul might enter. If your heart has been shaped by compassion, wisdom, and awareness, the visions are radiant, pulling you toward a life rich with opportunity and clarity. But if fear, resentment, or desire rule your inner world, the visions turn darker, more chaotic, mirroring the pain you still carry. These aren't punishments. They are the most honest reflections of your inner state. No one chooses for you. There is no judge. What you see and where you go next is shaped entirely by you. And that's where the gravity of this moment hits hardest. The bardo of rebirth is not the end. It's the threshold of a new beginning. But how do you meet this moment with clarity instead of confusion? How do you become conscious enough to choose wisely, even here? Let's take the final step forward and uncover what happens when the moment of rebirth arrives, and how your awareness can make all the difference. In the bardo of rebirth, everything you've ever thought, felt, or feared swirls into motion, you toward a life that mirrors your innermost state. Now, imagine that storm of emotions and memories like a spinning vortex encircling you in every direction. Each vision isn't just an image, it's a doorway, a living reflection of the energy you've carried through life. Whether it's fear, desire, or compassion, each one holds the potential to become your next reality. The question is, can you find that still point within the chaos? Can you remain centered enough to see clearly and choose the path of liberation over another cycle of birth and death? Here lies one of the most astonishing truths of the bardo of rebirth. These visions aren't distant, abstract symbols. They are tangible portals vibrating with the same emotional frequencies you've lived with. It's as if your subconscious becomes a reel of possible futures, flickering across your mind like scenes from a film. Each one pulls at you, begging the question: will you step blindly into one, or pause, observe, and choose with awareness? And yet, this moment of choice is not entirely conscious. Unlike selecting an item from a shelf, you don't get to pick your next life in the traditional sense. Instead, you're accumulated, calm. Every intention, every action, every lingering emotion acts like gravity, pulling you toward the realm that resonates most with your soul's current vibration. Still, not all is out of your hands. Tibetan teachings remind us that even amid the chaos, there remains a sliver of choice. If you can remain calm, anchored in clarity, detached from the illusions playing before you, you may influence the outcome. If you can recognize every vision as a projection of your own mind, you might transcend the pull altogether. This isn't just metaphysical philosophy, it's a mirror held up to your life right now. What if every small act of kindness, every mindful breath, every moment of self-awareness wasn't just shaping this life, but echoing forward into lives you've yet to live? The third bardo compels us to accept a powerful truth. Our lives are not isolated events. They are part of a vast, unfolding journey where every decision ripples across time. The karma we create doesn't wait until death to affect us. It begins now. In every choice we make, every word we speak, every thought we feed. So how do we break free from the patterns of fear, anger, or attachment that keep us spinning in the same karmic loops? Tibetan Buddhism offers a clear path. Through mindfulness, meditation, and deep inner work, we begin to understand our minds, not just the surface actions, but the roots beneath them. It's not about moral perfection, it's about clarity. The more aware we are of our motivations, the less control our unconscious habits have over us. We become less reactive, more free. When the moment of rebirth comes, that cultivated awareness becomes your guide. Karma, then, is not a judgment. It is not reward or punishment. It is a natural law, reflection of your inner world projected onto the canvas of reality. Every moment of presence in this life is a step toward liberation. But what does it actually feel like to cross that final threshold? What happens when the rebirth begins? In the next part, we enter the final stretch, where the soul's journey takes form once more, and everything you've learned becomes the foundation of what comes next. In the bardo of rebirth, we came to understand that our reality is shaped not just at death, but by every thought and action in life. Now, let's take that insight a step further. The third bardo doesn't just reveal what happens after death. It reveals a profound truth happening right now. Your mind, in every moment, is crafting your reality. Not metaphorically, but actively, through every decision, reaction, and belief you hold. This process doesn't begin at the threshold of death. It's unfolding as you breathe, as you speak, as you live. So pause for a moment and ask yourself, how much of your current life is the product of unconscious habit rather than mindful choice? How often do fear or autopilot responses guide your behavior without you even realizing it? The bardo of rebirth serves as a reminder that each moment you live is a brushstroke on the canvas of your soul's future. If you had the power to shape your next life today, what would you choose? What thoughts, actions, or patterns would you start transforming right now? In Tibetan Buddhism, this isn't just a philosophical concept, it's a deeply practical path. They see life as a sacred training ground where each breath prepares you for the ultimate journey. Death isn't seen as a fearful conclusion, but as the most important transition you'll ever make. And like any meaningful journey, preparation matters. What if you could meet death with the same clarity, calm, and strength you strive for in life? What if you trained your mind not just to live well, but to die well? One of the most revered practices that Tibetan Buddhism offers for this purpose is phawa, or consciousness transference. Imagine reaching the moment of death and focusing your awareness like a laser, directing it toward liberation instead of confusion. This is not about denial or resistance. It's about letting go with full presence, guiding your consciousness beyond this world with intention and courage. Could this be the key to crossing over with peace and purpose, no matter how your life unfolds? To build that kind of inner power, the daily practices are surprisingly simple and, yet profoundly transformative. Begin each morning with a meditation on impermanence. Just 5 minutes of reminding yourself that life is fleeting and precious can shift how you see everything. Suddenly, small irritations fade, and each choice feels more intentional. You begin to live with the awareness that time is sacred. Think of it as training your soul to see life through the lens of eternity. What if, instead of fearing the end, you welcomed each day as a new chance to love more deeply, to grow more honestly, and to live more fully. Another essential practice is Tonggulan, the Tibetan technique for expanding compassion. Picture yourself breathing in the suffering of others, holding it with courage, and then exhaling peace, love, and healing. At first glance, it seems simple, even symbolic. But in truth, it's a radical way of dissolving the ego, breaking down the barriers between self and other. And this is just the beginning. In the next part, we explore how these practices not only prepare us for death, but transform how we live, shaping a life of clarity, purpose, and freedom. Are you ready to discover how to bring this ancient wisdom into your everyday world? Let's continue. You've just discovered how ancient Tibetan practices like meditation, mantras, and compassion can prepare you for death by transforming how you live. Now, let's step into the moment when this preparation comes alive. Imagine this: you're on your deathbed, your body still, surrounded by the quiet presence of loved ones. But instead of fear or confusion filling the room, a sacred voice gently begins to speak. It's not just offering comfort, it's guiding you. Whisper by whisper, this voice unfolds the hidden steps of a journey no one else can see. These words are not casual farewells. They are instructions, prideful and deeply intentional. They're the verses of the Bardo Thodol, known in the West as the Tibetan Book of the Dead. This text is no myth. It's a carefully crafted spiritual map, passed down for centuries, meant to lead a soul through the mysterious transitions after death. And at this very moment, as your life fades, it's showing you the way forward. Picture your awareness floating, untethered, released from the body. Every moment is vivid. The voice tells you what to expect and how to meet it with courage. It names the visions you will see, the lights that will appear, and the choices that must be made. This is not fantasy. For those who have trained in these teachings, this moment is not filled with panic, is filled with potential. This sacred guidance doesn't just describe the afterlife. It gives your consciousness a path to walk, a thread of awareness to follow so you don't get lost in fear or illusion. It's a chance, perhaps, your last, to recognize the clear light, to stay present through the storm of visions, and to avoid the pull of rebirth that stems from confusion and unresolved karma. So why is this so powerful? Because the Bardo Thodol is designed to speak directly to your mind when it's most open, most vulnerable, when the ordinary distractions of life have vanished and only awareness remains. It's like having a wise teacher at your side as you step into the unknown. And here's the most incredible part. This experience doesn't have to begin at the end. You can start listening now. You can train yourself to recognize the clear light in everyday moments, to meet difficult emotions with compassion, and to live with an awareness that prepares you for death, not with fear, but with clarity. So ask yourself, if your final journey began tonight, what voice would guide you? What wisdom would you carry? Up next, we'll uncover how the verses of the Bardo Thodol are used in real life rituals, not just as metaphysical theory, but as practical, sacred tools for navigating the soul's greatest passage. Stay with me. Earlier, we explored how the Tibetan Book of the Dead serves as a map through the afterlife. Now, let's look deeper into how it's actually used when death is no longer an idea, but a living reality. Picture this moment, deep in the stillness of a Tibetan monastery. Someone lies at the threshold between life and death. Beside them sits a lama, a spiritual teacher who has spent a lifetime mastering the teachings of the Bardo Thodol. This lama doesn't remain silent or distant. Instead, he begins to speak, his voice calm, clear, and full of purpose. He reads directly from the Bardo Thodol, describing in vivid, poetic detail the stages the soul is about to encounter. These aren't just comforting words, they're instructions, signposts for a journey unlike any other. The Lama is not easing fear with platitudes. He's offering a precise orientation, helping the consciousness of the dying person navigate what most of us can barely imagine. This ancient tradition elevates the end-of-life experience to something far beyond a clinical event. In contrast to modern cultures, where death is often treated as something to be managed, hidden, or feared, Tibetan Buddhism embraces it as the most profound and transformative moment of existence. In this sacred approach, death is a carefully prepared journey, and the Bardo Thodol acts like a spiritual compass. It leads the soul through dazzling visions, radiant deities, terrifying wrathful figures, all of which are intense projections of the mind. And here's the incredible insight. None of these visions are external beings or supernatural punishments. They are manifestations of the dying person's own consciousness, mirrors of everything they've held inside: fears, desires, attachments, and potential. Now imagine having someone right there with you, guiding you through it, a steady, grounded presence who reminds you, this is not foreign. This is your mind. Stay calm, stay centered. Recognize the illusion, see through it. The Lama's voice becomes the anchor. As the first bardo unfolds and the clear light appears, he gently encourages you to merge with it, to recognize it as your own true nature. He doesn't command, he invites, softly guiding you toward liberation. This is not just ritual, it is a practice of deep compassion. The Lama becomes a spiritual navigator, one who walks beside you at the very edge of the unknown, bridging the world of the living and the mysterious landscape beyond. His role is to remind you of the awareness you cultivated in life, and to keep your attention on that awareness everness, as everything else seems to fall away. The dying person receives precise, beautiful instructions. They're told not to fear the radiant light that will emerge as the body fades and consciousness begins to float free. They're told this light is not a threat, it is the mind's essence, shining in its purest form. And as the journey continues, the guide describes the peaceful deities, the wrathful beings, and how to recognize them for what they truly are, reflections of your own mind. But this sacred process doesn't end here. Up next, we'll explore how these teachings continue beyond the moment of death, shaping the soul's journey as it enters the next realm, and why the choices made in those moments carry the power to transform eternity. Stay with me. Just as we began to understand the role of a spiritual guide in navigating death, we now step into a deeper reflection. What if we were truly prepared to face that final moment, not with fear, but with clarity? Think about it. How different would your experience of death be if you saw each stage not as a threat to your existence, but as a doorway, an opportunity for insight, for liberation? This way of seeing things stands in sharp contrast to many Western traditions, where dying is often reduced to a purely medical event, something to be managed, sedated, and hidden from view. But in Tibetan Buddhism, death is far more than a clinical occurrence, it's a sacred journey of the soul. This view challenges us to rethink everything we know about the end of life. Imagine the peace that would come from knowing that death is not a sudden plunge into darkness, but a guided unfolding of consciousness. Imagine facing your final breath not with dread, but with understanding. That's the power of the Bardo Thodol, not merely a text, but a companion on the journey where life begins to dissolve and something greater is revealed. And now you may wonder, can this ancient teaching really apply in today's world? Isn't this just for monks in mountain monasteries? Here's the transformative truth. These teachings were never meant to be locked away. The wisdom of the Bardo Thodol is for everyone. You don't need to retreat from life to benefit from them. All it takes is a shift in how you live, more intention, more mindfulness, more presence. What if, instead of avoiding the thought of death, you welcomed it as a teacher? What would change if you lived each day with the awareness that you're preparing not for an ending, but for the greatest transition you'll ever face? Now imagine this. You wake up each morning not with anxiety, but with calm determination. You move through your day not numb with habit, but alive with purpose. Why? Because you know that every step, every breath, is preparation for something beautiful, something sacred. You begin to live with a confidence that even in the unknown, you will not be lost. As we move further into the teachings of the Bardo Thodol, let this wisdom echo in your mind. To die consciously is to live consciously. Life and death aren't separate. They are threads in the same cloth. When you train yourself to face death with awareness, you're training your heart to remain open, even in life's most difficult moments. So ask yourself, how would your life change if every day became preparation for your final journey? How would you love? What would you let go of? Would your fears lose their grip? What if I told you that by facing death, you could unlock a deeper, richer experience of life, one filled with clarity, purpose, and even joy? Imagine living with that kind of fearless awareness, where each breath reminds you of what truly matters. That's what the Tibetan Book of the Dead offers, not only a guide through the unknown, but a radical path to freedom, right here, in the middle of your daily life. And yet, this wisdom doesn't only apply to the grand final moment, it also offers insight into the small deaths we face every day. So what happens when we bring this level of presence to the everyday endings? The breakups, the losses, the changes we often resist. Let's explore that next. As we reflected on the idea of living with presence by embracing death, a deeper truth emerged. Life is filled with smaller death transitions, uncertainties, and endings that carry the same potential for transformation. Every moment of change, every phase of uncertainty, every ending you've ever faced, these are all considered mini-deaths in Tibetan teachings. They are bardos, transitional spaces that hold within them the seeds of growth and renewal. So what if, instead of resisting or fearing these shifts, we learned to meet them with awareness? What if we saw each change not as a loss, but as a doorway? That is the very heart of Tibetan wisdom. Every ending is, in truth, a disguised beginning. But how do we bring this understanding into our daily lives? It begins with something deceptively simple: meditating on impermanence. Tibetan practitioners often start each day with a reflection on the fleeting nature of life, a quiet reminder that nothing lasts forever. Imagine waking up with the awareness that this day, this breath, this conversation is a gift that will never return. That shift alone can change everything. Suddenly, small annoyances fall away, and what truly matters comes into sharp focus. Another powerful method is known as the exchange of energy. With each inhale, you imagine breathing in the suffering and struggles of others. With each exhale, you release healing, kindness, and love. This isn't just an exercise in compassion, it's a radical transformation of the heart. And more than that, it prepares you for the ultimate act of release when your own time comes. Imagine living this way, day after day, your heart wide open to both the joy and pain of the world. How might that reshape your relationships, your priorities, your very sense of self? And then there is the practice of recognizing the clear light, of awareness, the same radiant clarity described in the Bardo of Death. Tibetan teachings urge us to notice those rare moments of deep presence in daily life. A sudden stillness, a flash of insight, a sense of timeless peace. Each of these is a glimpse into the deeper reality beneath the surface of experience. When you begin to carry that stillness into your routine, into your conversations, your work, your struggles, you touch something eternal. What if you treated each breath, each task, as if it might be your last? Petty frustrations would soften, gratitude would deepen, and your sense of aliveness would expand. By embracing these practices, you're doing far more than preparing for death. You're transforming the way you live now. It's no longer about simply getting through the day. It becomes a practice of purpose, clarity, and courage. A life lived with such awareness is already free. The Tibetan Book of the Dead gives us this radical gift, the chance to live with the same reverence, the same sacred awareness that we might bring to our final breath. What if facing your fear of death was the very thing that could unlock a life more beautiful than you ever thought possible? So now the question arises, how can you begin today? How can you carry this ancient wisdom into every decision, every breath, every interaction? How might your world change if you lived each day as though it were your last? Get ready, because what comes next is the final invitation, the heart of the Bardo teachings distilled into a single powerful truth. As we reflected on how embracing impermanence can reshape our entire way of living, a final and profound invitation begins to unfold. We are now stepping into the heart of what this ancient Tibetan wisdom truly offers, not just a guide for death, but a roadmap for living with extraordinary passion and fearless purpose. Just pause and imagine, what if a 1,000-year-old text, passed down through generations of Tibetan monks, holds the key to answering some of the most profound questions that modern science still wrestles with today? What is consciousness? Can the mind truly transcend death? And if so, what does that mean for how we live right now? This isn't a spiritual fantasy, it's a living inquiry, one that's drawing the attention of scientists, psychologists, and philosophers who once confined their search for truth to microscopes and brain scans. But now, their curiosity points in a new direction, toward something both ancient and revolutionary. And here's where it gets truly transformative. If the Tibetan Book of the Dead was right all along, if consciousness doesn't end with the body, then our entire relationship with life and death must be reimagined. The bardos once thought to describe distant realms now appear as states of awareness accessible in everyday life. We begin to see that dying isn't just a moment at the end, it's a mirror for how we live, how we love, and how deeply we understand ourselves. Imagine walking through your life with the calm confidence that comes from knowing death is not an end, but a passage into deeper dimensions of mind. Could this ancient wisdom be the very bridge between spirituality and science, between what we intuitively feel and what we are only beginning to prove? At this crossroads, the Tibetan Book of the Dead invites us to examine consciousness not as an isolated phenomenon, but as something that continues, evolves, and teaches us through every moment of change. And perhaps the boldest idea of all is this: death, far from being a terrifying finale, is our greatest teacher in the art of truly living. Throughout this journey, we've uncovered truths that go beyond culture, beyond religion truths that ask us not to fear mortality, but to greet it with open eyes and an open heart. What if you lived today as if it were your last? How would your priorities shift? Would you speak more kindly, forgive more quickly, love more fully? Estieha Giam Trumpa. Rinpoche once put it. This entire path is about reframing our psychological experience into something more meditative, more conscious. This perspective offers a radical shift in how we view not just death, but every transition in life as a sacred moment of transformation, each one a small death, followed by a rebirth. This isn't the end of the conversation. It's just the beginning. So, if you're ready to go even deeper, to question everything you believe about who and what you really are, there's more waiting for you. If your heart feels called, continue this exploration in our next video. You are not human, you are human. And until then, take a breath, reflect, and ask yourself, what hidden truths are you ready to uncover next? The journey continues.